address it again. We'll start over. So again, Rob Gillender, Real Football Show. Have my son Noah Gillender's here. He's heading back to Germany tomorrow. We're going to go into a little bit of the experience. He spent 5 months in Europe, a month in Spain, then he moved over to Germany for 4 months. He's with a program at Schalke. I don't know if from that angle if you can see he's wearing the Schalke logo. And it's an American team, but it's at the Schalke facilities, it's Schalke coaches. He's actually gotten to, how many different teams have you practiced with that are actual Schalke teams?
Three. And I coach the U11 girls as well.
So he's coached the U11 girls, he's also goalkeeper coach, and he's played with 3 of the youth soccer teams at Schalke. And they've had a few of, like, their equivalent of a general manager, I think called director of operations, has come to see his team play.
Yeah.
I don't know if that...
And the head of the youth is there as well, most of the time you practice.
Okay, so you have, and the idea is to give these players an experience that's unique.
And exposure.
And exposure to other clubs, because what he wants to do is play professionally in Europe. So every time they play a team, they all have some professional team above them. So it's exposure to those coaches for their teams, whether they're deep, what we would call, Bundesliga, which is where Schalke is currently, down to, I think that Germany has 5 divisions.
5, and it's usually the 4th is the one where it's like most people consider pro, but 5 is still pro.
Okay. So you have 5 different levels. So each club that they're playing has, a pro team at some level that could be their coaches can report back, hey, we played this team, and in his case, since he's a goalkeeper, hey, their goalkeeper was excellent, we should look at him. Or they have a really good striker, Michael, who's had that. So I wanted him to give, kind of the audience, both the difference from Spain to Germany, but also just what it's like playing in Europe and how it compares to playing in the U.S.
Well, I'll start off with Spain since I went there first. It's definitely like the atmosphere there is definitely different because like in Germany it's cold, it's rainy, it's gray all the time. In Spain it's sunny, it's bright, it's hot. To be fair, I did go there in different times, but like Spain, you could definitely tell it was like that year round. And Spain, it's like only turf. You only play on turf unless you're like with the first team.
Okay.
So it's just horrible. As a keeper, it's horrible on your body and your legs. And the first week I was there on the trial with Weska, it was probably the first week. It was probably some of the worst soccer I've ever played. Like I wanted to go home. I was homesick. It was my first time out of the country. I just didn't feel motivated. I just didn't want to play. But then I talked to God, and I talked to my roommate that was another godly man, and that helped me get through. I talked to you guys, you, Mom, a few of my friends, and that just helped me motivated. Then I started playing good, started to feel my rhythm. But I think that I just didn't feel at home. I just didn't feel like I was going to grow there. And then when I got the opportunity to come to Germany, I kind of pounced on it. But I think I like the Spanish football more than German football, because football, everyone knows tiki-taka, but it's more fast and technical stuff in Spain, which sweeps to more like play. But Germany was where I needed to improve on the stuff I needed to improve on. I needed to gain weight, I needed to be more physical, I needed to be loud, I needed to be proud, have like more aggression, more passion. I think that's why I decided to make it, and consciously and unconsciously decided to go to Germany, because it just felt like I needed to improve on that stuff, and that's where I needed to go at the time. If I ever get an opportunity to go back to Spain, I think I would like to go back to Spain, personally.
Okay, so again, Noah's played on an ECNL team here. He's played on Elite Academy, which is very similar to ECNL, and then above that would be, the only thing above that in the U.S. for boys is MLS Next. 20 players on this team this year. I think 18 of them were MLS Next players.
That's what I also wanted to touch on in this. Is I think I only played like half a season. ECNL, that was the highest I've ever played in the U.S. I think the U.S. I think it sucks at recruitment and scouting. Because all of these players that you see that are playing in Europe and doing well, we're not that good of a team. And it just shows you that scouting, it's more about money than anything with these kids. And also, like, if you're not like on the map, you're not going to get found. Like if you don't have a good social media or anything like that as a U.S. player, unless you have right connections, there's no way. I know football, soccer and football it's a football, it's a business at the end of the day,
Yeah.
and so you have to have connections. But also, like if you're good enough, in other countries you'll get found. But in the U.S., you have to put yourself out there, unlike other places, and it's hard to do that. Especially like the closest ECNL to me was an hour and a half, and the closest DA was 3 hours. So it was never like an easy step for me to do.
Right. Yeah, his age group. We have Austin FC here, and Austin FC obviously has an academy. But when they came in and took over the old DA Development Academy and turned it into MLS Next,
Supposed to be within my age group, but
they
then they changed
they
it.
never. Yeah, they never came in with his age group. So he went through a few years where the nearest one was either Houston or Dallas, both of which are about 3 hours plus. Depending on, I have to look at where they fall in Dallas and Houston to get there. So there wasn't that opportunity, and then as a goalie with his style, there wasn't really an ECNL team locally that worked for him either, which is why we ended up playing outside of that area. But that's again that I've talked about it on the Real Football Show previously, is about the scouting, and about that is like if and back to what we were talking in the last episode with Reina and Berhalter, is it shouldn't come down to connections, and it doesn't in other countries, because
It does and it doesn't though, because like being in Germany, it also is a game of chance, because you never know, you might be having the worst game and there's no scouts there, so that's fine, but you also might be having the best game and there's no scouts there, and vice versa.
right.
So one player on my team, no one really rated him that well, but he had a really good game, and when a scout was there and he got a trial. So it is a game of chance. It is a game of chance, and it also is. You also have to be a bit blessed.
Well, and you this is why you want to play your best all the time, as best as you can. Again, you're gonna.
Well, that's obvious.
Yeah, but because you don't know, you don't necessarily know. And I would personally say, and I think he would say, his best game that he had in Germany, it happened to be that the director of operations for Schalke, not the youth, but happened to be the, and the youth were both at that game and got to see him play, and got to see kind of the unique thing as a modern goalkeeper of how he did it. So he was fortunate in that regard, and I think that'll help him going into the spring. But when you look at it, whether it's England, whether it's France, whether it's Germany, pretty much any Europe, if you're in a small, and we're not in a small area, but we came from a small area in South Carolina. If you're in a small rural area, if you start exceeding for your local club, and the other thing is, we'll just stick to Germany, so that's where you're at the moment. Every area across Germany has a local club. It's not that far away.
And that person knows a person.
And that's the thing. If you're at what would be considered a small club in Germany, and you start exceeding, well, they have connections. They know someone up the line at the next biggest club, or the 2 clubs up, then go, hey, we've got this striker, we've got this midfielder, we have this defender, we have a goalie that's starting to do just really, really well, and we want the next opportunity for him. And it's a call. And boom, and they're on trial. And if they do well at the trial, then they're going to go, okay, well, we're going to sign you to a youth, depending on the age, we're going to start moving you up. And that's going to happen. And I hate to say it, there is money in that for these clubs, because there's what they call sign-on fees. Mm-hmm. So Neymar is
popularity as
well.
Yeah,
Neymar is a good example, and then Noir is a good example too. So we'll cover that. Like Neymar, when he came from Brazil, that was one of the last holdups with Barcelona. There was actually 2 clubs in line to get money, and so when Barcelona was signing him, it wasn't just the club they were signing for him. It's the club that club in Brazil had signed Neymar from, both of which, because they were signed. So they had to work out, we got to give, I think it was like $5 million to the club that wasn't even the one they signed it for, and then obviously more to the one that directly signed him. And with that, but the other side of it, it's like he's talking about, like Manuel Neuer. And if for those who don't know, he's obviously he plays at Bayern Munich now and has for years, but he started at Schalke. Schalke still uses that, and should, because that's where one of the greatest goalkeepers of all time came through their system.
Shout out my goalkeeper coach. Coach, you might know here. Shout out Gregory.
Yeah. So that's where you have, there's incentive, not just money, but it's publicity and everything else. You can sit there and say, hey, that player who's now on, the German youth team, or is now on one of the big Bundesliga teams, came through our academy, and we got him up to that level. And that starts to get down to where you have different, that doesn't happen here because they don't want to give up the player.
It's all about money in the U.S. and that's something that you definitely see. Because if they want a player here in Europe, they'll get that player and they make sure that player can play. And because it's not expensive or it's free. And here it's all about money. You travel and stuff. If you gotta pay, you gotta pay.
Well, and I look at it like one of the girls' ECL teams here is at a showcase in Florida right now. Not all of them. I think it's a fairly limited age group for this showcase. But when you look at Texas, Dallas, Fort Worth, both of which would be top 10, size-wise in this country if they were separate, and of course together they're huge. Houston, Austin, San Antonio,
El Paso
to some degree, all in the state of Texas. Why do teams have to leave Texas to compete? They shouldn't have to. And the biggest problem with that is the expense, because you start building extra expense. Well, we got to, from Texas to Florida, you're gonna have to get a plane. And of course, when you get there, then you're gonna have to rent a car. And then when you get there, you're gonna rent a car. You're gonna have to get a hotel. And all this is just forgetting. I had to buy a uniform. I have fees with the club, everything else. It starts restricting.
Cleats.
How many sets of goalie gloves did you go through in Germany?
4 to 5, because the turf just eats it up. Because you practice on turf every day.
So as a goalie, the additional expense of I had to buy a new set of goalie gloves every 3 to 4 weeks.
And tights and tape.
Yeah. Okay. We loaded him up on tape. He's going back to Germany with, I think, 20 plus rolls of tape, just so he's not going to have to do that for a while. But that's where, I think the U.S. does an okay job of saying, okay, this is a kid who's on scholarship or whatever, and clubs do, I don't know of any club that doesn't offer some level of scholarship. But it's not just reducing the fees, it's everything else, is when you start putting him in a league that, well, I can't go. I can't, when he first joined one of the teams he was on, they were going to they'd already qualified for nationals, they wanted to take him to nationals, but they'd already had a trip to Canada. And financially, we just had to say we couldn't do both trips. And the trip to nationals seemed to make more sense than a trip to Canada. Now, my wife's from Canada, so he really wanted to go to Canada. But that's where you start getting into, there's limitations, and that's where, there's the cost of a player playing in Europe is roughly the same here as it is there. It's the difference of who's paying for it. Here, I'm paying. When Noah was here, I'm paying the registry. If we have to travel, I'm paying for the hotel and the gas and the food and everything else. The difference when you're in Europe is the club's paying for it. Now, the club's paying for it because somewhere along the line, every club has had a player they signed on. And then when that player signed on, they got hundreds of thousands of dollars, or for the really big ones, like I mentioned earlier with Neymar, it's millions of dollars. How long can you fund your club when that's the case? The other thing is that they all have sponsors paying for them. And that's one of the things I guess I want to address in one of the later episodes is, where does the U.S. soccer money go, and is it really developing players here, or is it not? So, we have a few more minutes on this episode. We hit, when you look at the level of play, and whether it's speed, whether it's physicality, whether it's technical, how would you compare? You've played at a fairly high level here in the U.S. and now in Germany you're playing against Bundesliga level youth academy teams. What's the differences, highlights?
I think I'm going to do, because me and my team has talked about this, most of the team says speed. I don't think speed's that big of a deal to me. It might be just because I'm a goalie, but I don't think it's. I think it's definitely you see the progression and the attention of a player, and what like the physicality for sure, because everyone's big. Even if you play a team younger than you, because when I play with the youth, even if there's someone younger, all the kids are big. Like Germany, Netherlands, all kids are big, and then definitely you see the kids fighting for like their teammates. Like they're more of a team, they're a collective team. And so whenever you play like a good team, everyone else is all going 100%. And when you play in the U.S., you see players just trying to play for themselves. That's the best way to play it.
Yeah, and I think part of that is
like speed and intensity.
Right. Yeah, and I think when you put the team atmosphere, because we saw it with some of his teams here, is when you have a good team and you're not at that big club, the big club's trying to steal players, whether it's 1 or 3 or depending on the team. So in Germany it's Bayern Munich. Every German kid to some degree grows up, hey, I want to play for Bayern Munich. Of course, they have their local team that they're fans of, but Bayern probably sits across most, where in Spain you have Real Madrid and Barcelona. France, I guess it's probably mostly PSG, but I think there are a few other clubs that are,
Lyon.
Yeah, that are
Marseille.
That are
Monaco.
England, you have tons to some degree that have, Liverpool, Manchester United, Manchester City, Chelsea, Tottenham, all that have, some level of, hey, I want to play for them. But I remember he had a great English coach back in South Carolina. And I remember asking him who's his Premier League team, and it's Newcastle. But that's not really his local team. I'm not going to pronounce it right. Hartlepool or something like that, which is more. Newcastle is the team he follows in the Premier League, but his local team is actually a smaller club. But I can't remember what level they're at the moment. And that's the difference. The thing is, when you come up through, because he had a friend in South Carolina that had played for West Ham, and his dad had actually been some sort of youth coach at Lewis, yeah, I thought it was West Ham.
No, it's Norwich.
Norwich.
West Bromley, Norwich.
Okay. But when you come up through that, you build that, hey, I came up and I moved up to this club or that club, and most of the bigger clubs, and I follow Manchester City, but Foden came up through the Manchester City ranks, and they have a few players coming up through that ranks. And with that, it builds loyalty to the club. I've played for the club and everything else. And where you change out players a little bit, you build up, because you play together for 4, 5, 6, 7 years together. Mm-hmm. That doesn't happen a lot in the U.S., unfortunately, because as you move up from U10 to U12 and everything else, now you're getting recognized and you're moving to this club and your friend went to that club and everything else. And Atlanta's a huge area especially for girls, and there's 4 to 6 big clubs in Atlanta for girls. So you might be on one club and you got friends that you played for years that went to a different ECNL club, and then another couple that went to that. So you don't build up that loyalty to it. I have a friend on Facebook, his daughter's, I think they said to graduate, and he was talking about, it's like, why are we traveling to go to Florida to play when there's perfectly good teams? And then now that ECNL for girls is still, I think, the top girls academy is taking it. So you have this club that's on girls academy, this one on ECNL. They don't want to play each other preseason. Because why? Money. Because if my team loses to this other team, then now they're gonna sell and point, hey, our U17 team beat theirs, so we're better than them. Well, on that day you may be, and again, that's not to say, but you're adding expenses for no reason other than we got to protect our brand, we got to protect our money-making machine, rather than what is best for the parents. So if you're in an area that has multiple teams at the level, why are you traveling? Play the team in town, and you just have to, if you're better, deal with it. I think that's one of the things on the youth level. We're never going to have promotion relegation like they have in Europe. I think most people that are watching this will know what that is, but in England, the bottom 3 teams in the Premier League go down. The top 3 teams, and there's a little bit of playoff in there, but the top 3 teams in the championship, which is the level below, come up, and that happens every year. So you can't do, and we're both Philadelphia 76ers fans, so
Can't tank.
you can't tank.
Trust the process.
Yeah, you can't tank 3 years like the Sixers did about 10 years ago, keep looking for the #1 draft pick, and they finally got it, but
And we're still.
and still didn't really work out. But you can't do that because when you finish at the bottom, you get sent down, and the money difference from the top league to the next level, where still decent money, is a just huge difference. So you want to you're gonna do everything in your possibility to stay up. And Boltus League, they have where EPL English Premier League has 20 teams, Boltus League has 18. They send 2 teams down every year.
What? Bundesliga?
Well, it's-
Oh no, so it's bottom 2 get automatically, and then I think it's the 3rd place team battles like that. What's it called, the 16th spot, because there's only 18 teams, and like a playoff game, just those 2 teams, and whoever wins that stays.
But so either way,
Okay.
and that progresses all the way down. The new, I guess the new popular English, there's 2 new popular teams in the U.S. for England teams, Leeds, because they have an American coach and a few good American players, and Wrexham because they have very famous owners, and Ron Reynolds and Rob.
Well, that's technically not England though.
Yeah, they're in Wales, but greater UK, but that's in their league. But they're in the 5th division, which in England they have 6. Well, in the 5th division, they don't have quite as many teams that move up, so they have to compete to move up. But that, again, that goes from the top all the way to the bottom. There's always that promotion relegation, so there's an incentive to put your best players out there, play your best. There's no incentive to tank because there's no draft, there's no anything like that. So that's where, and currently Schalke is sitting in 18th place. They're doing everything they can to, how do we strengthen our team right now in January? This is the transfer window. What do we need to do to get up, preferably above 16th, or at least put us in 16th, where at least we got a shot to stay up in the Bundesliga, because the money difference is huge. So that's kind of gets into that, and I think pretty much, yep, that'll wrap up this episode. So we'll move on to.
We stopped and restarted.